Jo que us vull parlar avui és del nostre projecte, que és un projecte, jo penso que és molt interessant, en el sentit de que estem atacant una malaltia molt important a nivell mundial, d'una manera, podríem dir una mica simple, o una mica low cost, però que en realitat obeeix a una estratègia reduccionista de dir, escolta, puc fer això, no puc fer-ho, ho vaig fent, faig una altra cosa i finalment, això evidentment, acompanyat amb un coneixement científic posat al dia, etc. Aquesta és una mica l'objecte de la meva xerrada. La tuberculosi és una malaltia que molta gent pot pensar, de fet aquí ho he parlat amb molta gent, dius, no, això està erradicat, això és vintage, no? Però realment és l'assassí més important de la humanitat, en el sentit de que, sí, cambio a castellano, para sí.
Or in English, you want.
English, okay.
English. So, the idea is that TB is thought to be a sort of eradicated disease, but when you see the records, you see that so far has been the major killer of the humankind. In the last 200 years, 2,000 million people has died because of TB. So it's a massive killer. So far, nowadays what we have is 10 million people with disease, new incidentally, with 1.5 million deaths. And of course, potentially 100 million new cases of infection in TB. So it's a major threat. So why this sort of disease has been, people think that is eradicated? One point is that, of course, is not the situation today like the one that was in the industrial era in the 19th century, or even 100 years ago in Barcelona, where it was the major killer of the young people. So it was the major killer. So of course it's not this case. But numbers says that incidence is brutal. So why this sort of disease is not, there is not more awareness about it? It's because there is a lot of stigma. So people hide it. So you can go to the TV broadcast and say, I have cancer, I am fighting against cancer, or I have HIV, I am fighting against HIV, but you can never say that I have TB, I've been treated with.
What are the symptoms?
This is probably the third point. Symptoms are very vague. So the WHO says, if you are coughing for 2 weeks, potentially you can have TB. So what? I mean, I tell you, for instance, once in my hospital, we had this project trying to study people that had just infection, to see the sort of lesions in the tomography, to look very carefully in these tiny lesions that are made when you are just infected and there is no clinical relevance. And one of the volunteers were a friend of mine that was a physician, a doctor of the hospital, and we made the tomography and we realized that he actually had TB. I said, come on man, you have TB, come on. I have not TB, you are joking. Oh, come on, this is TB, let's go to the specialist. Another friend of us, of course. No, you have TB. No, I don't believe it. It's impossible. I'm feeling well. There's no. It's impossible that I could have TB. Maybe sometime I can. You can please go.
Sorry.
Yeah, don't worry. Okay.
Sorry.
So the symptoms are that vague that even the people that is already sick, it has no this perception, but they can infect. So the difference between infection and disease is that you are just infected, nothing happens, you have just a tiny lesion of less than 1 millimeter in your lung that hardly you can see it in the tomography, high throughput tomography. When you have disease, you have normally at least 1 centimeter lesion in your lung, and then there is enough bacilli to infect other people. So that's the difference. But in this case, of course, the tomography, the lesion was not 1 centimeter; it was a little bit less, but it was still able to infect, because when we looked at the sputum culture, it was positive. Mm-hmm. But so we said to him, okay, you don't realize that you don't want to have the treatment, but at least be at home, to not infect everybody. And when it was the time that the culture was positive, and he realized that, wow, yes, I have TB. How come? It's impossible. So it's this sort of thing. So you have this idea that is a vintage disease. You have this idea that is also related to be in prison, to be immigrant from immigrant from a low income country. You have had AIDS, for instance, that increases the possibility to have TB. So it's not well seen. And also the sticking point, but the objective is that the transmission is from the air. So if now I have TB here, you are just listening to me, and it can infect to you.
Yes.
I mean,
How come?
That's why there is this stigma.
like that.
Isn't there?
Just speaking. So my aerosols, we constantly make aerosols in our lung.
Mhm.
So just making the push with the diaphragm to talk. So we are constantly exchanging our aerosols.
Yeah.
This is very poetic.
Not really.
well, I mean, it's natural. I mean, yeah, I mean, in a room you exchange your aerosols, so it's not that bad. I mean, but of course.
Ostras, dat was okay,
Of course, if you have TB, then you have this chance to infect the others. No? So that's why even today, half of the cases are expected. So half of the cases in Asia and Africa, which are maybe the 80% of the cases, no, maybe not 80, but maybe 60% of the cases are hide. They are not seen, they are not discovered. The WHO that monitors that from time to time, so that it can make this projection and make this prediction that they have the double. So for instance, last year India started to make active surveillance and discovered 300,000 new cases that it was not expected. How come? Not because they have been looking at. For instance, when in Spain is said that tuberculosis is only in Barcelona, which is okay. Why is that? Well, because in Barcelona there has been this active surveillance program for 30 years, looking carefully to all the cases, looking for the contacts, giving the treatment to everybody, investing a lot, and making active surveillance. And of course, then you see the number that you have. In fact, Spain, in terms of WHO, is not good. How to say? Surveiller or a good source of data, because WHO says that in Spain there are 5,500 cases, and Spain, the official report says that we have 4,000. So there are 1,500 cases that are missing. Mm-hmm. So that's what I mean. So overall, this makes the case that TB is a residual disease, is not in the public mentality. So because of that, politicians are not interested on. Then the industries are not interested on. Financiers are not interested on. So it has a lack of investment. In fact, the major investor in TB is Bill Gates.
Yes.
In all the world. So usually when you want to make tech transfer in TB, you say, I'm going to go just a little bit from phase 1, phase 2 or whatever, and then I will call Bill Gates to finance the phase 3, which is expensive. So this is the point. In our unit, we have been working in tuberculosis for 20 years in the Hospital Can Ruti in Badalona. And it's interesting because when I was I was I was the founder of this unit, and this started on 20 years ago. And this is interesting because when I was doing my MD courses, TB was eradicated. So there was this thought from the 80s, they said, well, you know, in the 2000 there will not be TB anymore. How come? Why was this perception like? Because in the 80s there was this, it was said this chemotherapy with 3 drugs that just in 6 months you could have the curation of the disease in the 90% of cases. So at that time it was thought that it could be enough with this treatment, and even more important, this treatment could be done at home. The perception was seen like, well, if you can do that just in 6 months and do that at home, is the end of the disease. Then all the sanatoriums, all the dispensaries that was said, you know, from if you look to the Romantics, from the end of the 19th century that they went to the sanatoriums, all this disappeared from day to night. But this was the major failure, because again, when you are sick, in 15 days treatment you feel really well. So then the thinking that you have to be treated for 5.5 months more, it's really tough. Even when the treatment is composed by several pills, so you must take them, and of course they are not very pleasant. You can have some
adverse events.
Adverse events, yeah. So and you can have some toxicities, and it was separate pills, and then you take this one, the blue ones, and I don't take the red ones. This is one thing, the compliance, but also it can happen that, for instance, you can have a situation in your country that you have not the stability enough, that your health system runs well. It's what happened, for instance, in the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, that there was instant shortage of pills, medications. So this made even the problem worse, because it was the origin of multi-drug resistance and extremely drug resistance. So now we have a TB that is even worse than we had in the 80s. Actually, from these 10 million people that has TB today, 500,000 is multi-resistant. So this is...
What does that mean? That it can be treated?
They can be treated, or the treatment comes from 6 months to 24 with very hard drugs, till the point that some of these patients are considered like have these decisions that probably now you can attach to a cancer treatment, in which the secondary effects are that hard that they decide not to follow the treatment anymore.
And when they die?
And they die. They die slowly, and they can infect more people. So, and even, for instance, we have these cases in India that these people that, because it's slow, so the manifestation, clinical manifestation, is that it destroys your lung, but it do it slowly. So it can take. There are these records from the 50s in which in India that the survival of TB without treatment was around 40%. So even these people can survive. 40% survival.
Yeah.
But this means that these people still infect or affect. Yeah. So for instance, in India there are these people that they cannot find a good treatment, and they go from side to side of the country looking for a better treatment without any control. Is what happens, for instance, when we see, for instance, now here in this CIES, the Center for Internment of Immigration, we had a lot of cases that people that are recruited in these barracks where 300 people sleep together. So it's very easy to
refugees, for example.
Refugees, and then they just leave, and then they're sent to another place. But they have routing through Europe. There are these amazing histories we know from the first line. People that has been in Barcelona, take a bus, go to Holland. In Holland is not accepted, then they go to France, and then finally they come back to Barcelona with a bus. In Barcelona, finally is found, in the street, like half died or whatever, and then they realize they have an MDR-TB. So this person has carried all this TB through all Europe at the end. So it's what happens when you are not strict on the management of immigration. You cannot say that you are not looking at the problem. You must be straight on that. If you have immigration, you must treat immigration, keep the health status of these immigrants. Otherwise, it's not. It's not fair, but also it's risky for your population.
Yeah.
That's what they used to do in the United States.
Yes.
Well, in the United States they are very strict. If you enter to the States, they make you a tuberculin, they make you an X-ray, and if you are infected, they treat you.
Yes.
That's the correct way to.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I got I was a postdoc at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and I went to the health system, the health service. No, the health service of the hospital, and then they realized that I was TB positive, and then they did the X-ray, and then I found out that I belong to a generation where they made a kind of vaccine when we were kids.
Yes.
And it's a vaccine that now I don't know whether if I was infected at any time or it was because of the vaccine.
Well, this is a good point.
Well, we were all vaccinated now. I mean, like TB.
No, it
was a
depends.
vaccine.
There was a
very
vaccine.
long.
There is a vaccine. This is interesting because there was the vaccine, the bacille of Catalonia.
Yes.
There was this it was a kind of remake of the measles, the smallpox vaccine,
Okay.
in which they got a strain from the cows and they attenuated it.
Okay.
So they make these several passages through culture, in vitro culture, in order to attenuate the virulence. This is a nice history because it was meanwhile when there was the First World War. And it was in this lab in Belgium, so there was in Lille, excuse me, and there was the Germans invading that, and the people just keeping the passages in the middle of the mess.
Yes.
So, and it was in the 1923 where they finally got the attenuated vaccine, and in fact Barcelona was one of the first cities in the world that got this vaccine. It was just given by KINNERNET.
Yes.
They said, okay, let's go. So it was this doctor, Louis Sallier, that actually has a dispensary that still is working, named after him, Louis Sallier Dispensary. It's very interesting. And it's a kind of a pale of architectonic style because it was in a rationalistic way. It was made on the 30s. It's very interesting It's in the Carretales. You go to the Plaza Castilla.
Yeah.
It's there, and now it's very close to the CCMB in Barcelona. So now they have destroyed a lot of all the buildings, and they have just keep this building. Yeah, it's very nice. It's a very nice building, and it was named after this physiologist, Louis Sallier. That was the first that introduced this vaccine, but. What we know now is that this vaccine is not enough. This vaccine actually is given to the neonates to avoid extremely mortal disease. In fact, when I have these colleagues in South Africa, that what they do is when they are delivering a neonate, just it's showing his shoulder or her shoulder, they just inject.
Wow.
They say, how come? Well, because it does not. he or her, he's
not
not,
obvious.
yeah, does not move. So, but this is quite clever because the incidence in South Africa is the highest in the world. So 1% of the population has TB every year. Yes, the incidence is 1% of the population. It's the highest. So this poor guy, probably or girl, probably just being in the hospital for 1 or 2 days could be infected by anybody and had this really mortal TB. So this is useful for this child in order to not have this meningitis or have this disseminated TB. So this is useful, but it does not protect against usual TB. That does not protect you to have infection. And in fact, after 20 years doing research in our unit, we have realized that it is impossible to stop the infection. Why? Because the aerosol, infected aerosol, gets to the alveoli. And the alveoli, you have the alveolar macrophage. And this cell is a cell that is a cleaner, is not a police. There is a misunderstood on how is the immunity. Macrophages usually are set like police or soldiers, whatever. But it's not. They are just cleaners. They have like a room like that, looking at in an anthropomorphic way. You have a room like that with 25. No, this is a little bit smaller, but imagine this room with one person, and every 6 seconds this door is open and enters air with all the dust, virus, bacteria, fungus, yeast, whatever. And the guy is there and trying to keep all this clean because the object, the function of this room is to exchange gas, not to make a mess, not to make inflammatory response. So there is these walls are really thin because they are very, very tiny in order this gas to go to the capillary vessels in order to make the exchange. So you want this really clean, really, aseptic, but of course you don't ask for help every time that you are infected because probably every 6 seconds this macrophage is infected, especially in Barcelona or if you live in a big city. So you have a lot of things that could force inflammation. So precisely these cells are the ones that TB bacilli aim the most. They like to live inside of these cells and to reproduce inside of these cells. So you cannot avoid that. They will never ask for help. And that's the big problem. They finally destroy the cell and then infect the cells that are on the rest of the rooms. And until there are not enough rooms infected, there is no such inflammatory response in which then the bacilli goes to the lymphatic vessels and go to the lymph node where the immune response is triggered. Even if you have immunity, it means that you will have these lymphocytes, memory lymphocytes, that will reckon the antigens of these bacilli, and they will activate the infected macrophages. But what you win with a vaccine is that you have these memory lymphocytes. So it will take like 4 or 5 days less to have the proliferation of these lymphocytes to activate the macrophages, infected macrophages. But how these cells goes to will reckon where there is an infected macrophage. You must imagine that all this. You must imagine like the Barcelona, plenty of these 25 square meters rooms, plenty of them, like 300 million. So where I'm going to go? Where there is inflammatory response, where there is enough destruction, there is enough growth of the bacilli. So then they go to there. So they must be attracted. So it's not a question of making these memory cells, but also to let them to go to the infectious foci. So this only happens when you have enough bacillary load. So you always are infected. This can happen constantly. And in fact, the idea that we have from our colleagues in South Africa is that they can have a roommate with TB infect them once when they wake up. They go they take a taxi, they're infected again. They go to the hospital, they're infected again, and so on and so on. So what we start to do 17 years ago is to make a therapeutic vaccine. This was very easy. When we realized that you could be infected constantly, and then at the end, when you have this immune response, what we saw is that in the granuloma, which is the lesion that is made with these lymphocytes that activate these macrophages, at the end you have a kind of lesion that is called granuloma. What we saw in this lesion is that the macrophages, when they were old, they tend to live. And they tend to live with some of the bugs, with this bacilli, with them. And then there was a chance to reinfect again the lung and keep this infection for a long time. At least we say, actually it's known that the first 2 years that you are infected is when you have the chance to have the 80% chance to have active TB. Then it reduces exponentially. But the way that it keeps the bacilli in your lung is because of that. You have the immune response, you have these lymphocytes that kill the majority of the bacilli, but then some of them are drained with these old macrophages, and then they become part of the aerosols, and then can reinfect again, because it's possible. You can constantly be reinfected, and endogenously and exogenously. So the idea that we got is, well, we can try to teach the immune response, to try to localize this bacilli that has not been killed by the usual immune response, because they become dormant. This is an important thing. So one thing is that the bacilli can grow and destroy macrophages, but once there is the immune response, there is a stress response that makes this bacilli die or become dormant, become just static, in order to not be susceptible to the immune response. So the idea is that these dormant bacilli are not identified by the immune response, so we wanted to address the immune response to survive for this bacilli. This was the origin of the Ruti vaccine. So what we did, it was a combination of chemotherapy in order to kill the growing bacilli, and then with this vaccine made with dormant bacilli, made artificially, in order to stimulate the immune response to identify these bacilli and to destroy them. This was one thing. But we started 17 years ago. We did this first clinical trial. Then the second one. There was immunogenicity. There was this. What we did with this vaccine was to trigger this immune response to look for this dormant bacilli. But what we finally, the problem is that this was a pharmac, of course, it's a vaccine. The problem is with the vaccines is that you have to demonstrate at least once that it is efficacious in the humankind. So that's why it's stopped, because we could not pay the clinical trial to do that. Meanwhile, we were starting another project, another approach, in which in TB, one of the big questions was to understand why this.
But one question before you
Sure.
enter into the new chapter: why there is no interest from the investors of paying that? Because if this is such big problem of public health, why there is no interest of the investors?
There is no interest at all, because every year there is this document that is set to see that there is a shortage in investment in TB. And my perception is that because there is not a public awareness, there is no strong push from the citizenship, there is not enough lobbyism in favor of that. The only time that it was a strong lobbyist push was in New York, the 1993, where there was epidemics of TB, MDR TB in HIV positive people. And then there was very strong commitment from the congressman in the Congress of the United States, and this came to the WHO and they declared the global emergency. So imagine, I finished my career on the 1992, and all my career, TB was thought to be something from the past. And suddenly, the year after, was declared the global emergency. So but this was eradicated. This was what I wanted. I mean, my perception was that. So, and it was a kind of shock because there was nobody doing research against TB at that time. It was all stopped, and they had to go to pick up to look for these people that were doing research in leprosy. Yeah. So there is a mycobacterium as well. So there was these people working in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in India, and also in Spain, in Valencia, in Fontillas. Yes. There was these people there, this group, an important group, or in Colorado State. And then they say, look, there is money for TB. What? TB? Why? How come? I say, okay. Then they turn. And actually, I went to Colorado State, the 94th, in the middle of this quick re-emergency of the research against TB. It was a very interesting time. Suddenly, there was these people that, no, we used to work with leprosy, and suddenly I'm, well, you know, yeah, it was very interesting. So I could have the chance to work with Patrick Brennan. That was an old guy. Well, it was Irish. Irish from,
obviously.
I think it was from Cork, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I thought I should ask. They were actually in Colorado. There was this pub called County Cork, in which my boss Ian Orme was the coach of the soccer team. So we used to go to this County Cork to look for the TV, to the soccer, European soccer. At 12, so we should go there to have a beer. Lunchtime to see that. So it was, it was. Imagine I finished at 92 and 94. I was in the TV wall, like suddenly, like no, we need something else. So it was like that. It was an interesting time. And well, the explanation is that it was not enough awareness. I don't see any explanation because you see that how important is that. It should be enough to trigger. But the other concept is that there is no a winner, a real winner. So look at that. For instance, Ebola. After this crisis 3 years ago, this year they had a vaccine, successful one, 100% efficacy. Why? Well, because all this history that I'm telling about these cells that must reach the infected ones and this inflammatory response, this is not the case. In Ebola, if you trigger the antibody response and you have antibody embedding all the tissues all the time, it's enough. So with the antibody, if Ebola virus goes there and is reckoned and is neutralized, it's the end. No infection, no inflammation, nothing. It's there. It's all. It's what you see when you have hepatitis vaccine, when you have diphtheria vaccine, you have tetanus, all the vaccines that we are.
So TB is much more pervasive.
It's a problem of the disease itself. Yeah. It's like malaria. I remember when I was a student, I'm talking like anyway, but I remember when Pere-Joan came to the academy, the Catalonia academy, with his vaccine. It was also in the 90s. Look, we have a vaccine. Say, wow, but there is only 30% efficacy, and everybody was laughing. Now the vaccine that Glaxo has the same efficacy, and it's going to be licensed. It has changed in all this time. We have realized that there are infectious diseases that are not that easy to tackle.
Because are there different strains of TB? Or
there are different strains. It's very interesting. This TB is that efficacious because of this capacity to infect the cell that it needs to be infected. that even you have different strains, but the immunity that trigger all the strains are the same. So there is no mutation. Is the a way is a stability itself is very successful, like it is. So there is not too much variability. It's true that there are some strains that are a little bit more virulent, but it's not really a major difference. So the point was that we say, okay, we know the origin of the infection, we know how it keeps in the body. The problem is not infection. This was the change of what we had. The problem is that why the infection becomes a disease. And we make this approach from the physicist and the mathematician point of view, which is that what is the difference between infected and people with disease? Is the size of the lesion. So instead of making all this algorithm and say, well, what are the receptors? No. What we know it works is that when you are infected, they make the tuberculin and then they make X-ray. You have the tuberculin positive, you have the X-ray negative. So what does it mean? X-ray only detects 10 millimeters lesions. So, okay, the idea is, and it has been working for a long time, if you only have the tuberculin skin test, you have a treatment. If you have a lesion, you have another treatment, from the practical point of view. So in a way, it's a good
separation.
It's a good separation, it works. So it's what you have to address. The problem is that when we started to work with the mini pig model, we realized that once you are infected and you have this tiny 1 millimeter lesion, in 10 days is encapsulated naturally because the lung is a structure with a net of collagen fibers that makes possible the mechanism of respiration. And this is a mechanism, it's just a mechanic thing. When they have a little disruption, the fibroblasts go there and encapsulate. So then the question was very easy. How these lesions that are 1 millimeter and that in 10 days can be encapsulated very easily can become a 10 millimeters one? It's impossible. Because even you don't need to have vaccination, you don't need to have immunity.
It's the mechanism.
It's just a local thing that you cannot even, it's a mechanical thing. So well, we start to make a lot of hypotheses and assumptions. We have a fantastic holistic view of how the inflammation, how this can be. And at the end, we were looking for we were looking for this. One of them, the qualities of this disease lesion was that it was a liquefaction, so it became liquid inside of it. So we were looking for an experimental model to reproduce that, and we found it. And what was more amazing is that this model was already set by other groups in America that were looking for new drugs. They say, well, they look very nice, this model, but they look only to the model, not to the progression from the infection to the actual big lesion. But we had the right question. We were totally focused on why this 1 millimeter lesion could be 10 millimeters. They had never this question. And what we realized is that, are you going to talk now? No. Okay, you are coming.
But we are running out of time.
Yeah. So I'm going to finish.
And the next one.
You are the next one?
Yes.
Right?
Well, so I will try to. So the idea was that, and we realize is that there is a mechanism that suddenly there appears a new cells that we never had. We had never thought that could be there. There were the neutrophils, the ones that make pus. And these ones are the responsibles for the extracellular growth of the bacilli. So suddenly appears the neutrophils, and the bacilli can easily grow extracellularly. They don't need to infect one cell and to reproduce internally, blah, 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 blah. So there was a total change of landscape. And the proof of concept was that we started to treat these mice with ibuprofen and we could stop the progression of
Ibuprofen?
Yes, with ibuprofen.
it. Totally. You can imagine the face of my technician when I said, look, Jorge, now you are going to treat. I give him a syrup, a pediatric syrup. We are going to treat mice with this. I say, come on. After 20 years, we are going to treat TB with ibuprofen.
But the explanation is that ibuprofen it doesn't allow the
Inflammation.
inflammation.
Look, this was a long way, because this came from an idea from the What was the difference between the pus made in abscess, that was the staphylococcus infection, of the pus that we had with TB? And we started to work with the staphylococcus, and then we saw that heparin could stop that, because the clothing mechanism and so on. So we started to treat mice with heparin, and it worked!
Really?
Say, come on, we are going to treat TB with heparin!
But it didn't work.
Then we realized that heparin was a strong anti-inflammatory agent, and they say, turn to ibuprofen. It's easier. And it worked. And it was the proof.
And heparin, what else does it do? Because that's a natural, it's melanoma or something like
No, but heparin usually you do for anti-clothing. Clothing. To stop the cloth.
Yeah,
So it could be a mess.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe you treat the TB,
Yeah.
but then you kill the...
Yeah.
So finally, what we decide, and that's the end, is that we cannot treat everybody with ibuprofen, but what we could do is a tolerance against this exaggerated inflammatory response. So increasing the Treg response to stop the Th17 response that is responsible for the entrance of neutrophiles. And what we did is start to feed our mice with M. tuberculosis bacilli, head killed, as a meat, as a food, in order to induce Treg response, because our intestines is specialized in that, in making a tolerance to food. And of course this stopped the progression, but then again, this could be a drug, and then it could take like 20 years to go to the market. So then is what when decided, because we were microbiologists, we knew that there were some parents, some relatives of this bacilli in the public, in the water, potable water, Mycobacterium fortuitum for instance, that were relatives, and they were in the usual water. So we decided to look for this in order to make the process easier and also to be considered as a supplement food. And it worked. So now we have this spin-off that is making massive production of this M. fortuitum, a strain that we collected from a sample from Manresa, from a river, in my hometown river. And well, we identified as a Mycobacterium manresensis because you give as a microbiologist the name of the, because it was a little bit different, we have the sequence. And
the town is happy.
Everyone is happy, of course.
He's the king of the town.
Well,
I think named after him.
I think, today, last week they give me the poulet d'or. This is the, how you call that in English?
Poulet.
Poulet d'or. It's like the chicken, the little chicken.
Yeah.
How is it?
The golden
chicken.
The golden little chicken.
Yeah, the poulet. This is for innovative, blah blah blah. So it's thanks. For very innovative approach. So we.
But also in Badalona, they.
Of course,
they asked you to
I was invited also from the Badalona city to give.
That's where the hospital is.
Yeah, that's where my hospital is, of course. Yeah, of course, everybody. Yeah, no, I'm very happy. I mean, nobody is. I mean, I very well knowledge from all my citizenship. Yeah. So I'm a local hero. So I.
But that
I appreciate very much that.
What's in the water? It's related to the ibuprofen or no?
There is the steps with the ibuprofen.
Yes. The ibuprofen tells you the proof of concept is that you have too much inflammatory response, and this helps the growth of a bacilli and helps the exponential growth of the lesion. So if you stop the inflammatory response, you are able to stop the progression,
yeah.
and then allow the encapsulation.
Understood that, but which is the relationship between?
The relationship is that if you induce tolerance, like to food, making food with food, you induce Treg response, and then the Treg response stops the entrance of neutrophils and stops the progression of the lesion. So this is because Treg is in balance with the Th17 response, which is the responsible for entering neutrophils and increase the inflammatory response of certain lesions. So this was very easy. It was very easy. And the idea now is that we have this dossier, so we are registering in Europe and several countries in Asia and also in Africa. So far we have 65 countries licensed. So, and we expect to start to have it in market this summer. This summer.
In India.
In India, we don't know if we will start in India or in Philippines. We don't know exactly, or Vietnam. There are the three that are more advanced. But so far it's almost all India, China, Indonesia, Vietnam. Yes, and we have again the discovery is patent.
Yes.
We have the US patent already granted, the EU and the Japanese so far, and South Africa as well. So we have 16 countries with this. So it's a very strong, but again, is because of this regulatory pathway, we can offer that in a very low price. This treatment is 14 days treatment every year. We say if you feel that you have been infected, you can take that. It's non-toxic. It's totally secure.
Actually, it's the water.
It's the water, yes, from the water. So it's something that is, I mean, it's clear.
Safe.
It's very safe. And we have all the dossier saying that. Well, we have all the proofs that really prove that. So the idea is that in India it's going to be sold by 1.5 euros. Like so it's really
14-day treatment.
14-day treatment.
How many days?
14 days.
14 days? Wow, that's very good.
Yes, very good.
That's very good.
So we have made this business
It's affordable.
plan. It's affordable, but still it's not affordable. We have this bottom of the pyramid people.
Yes.
So we have reserved the rights to do that, put that in the food. So when this will grow, we will be able to open new channels for these people that never goes to the supermarket, never goes to the internet, to put it in food or to put it in whatever way that NGO or public service will find okay. So but then we will. The problem is the distribution. TB treatment in India is free, but is no interest on that.
Stigma.
No. The stigma is one thing, but also from the side of the health system, because nobody wants anything to make the real treatment. There is no treatment. So it's crazy. When you go there and you talk about TB, you say, well, this is a closed market. There's no chances to win anything. So in a way, we have granted this B Corp certificate because we are trying to address a very strong policy with a strong social impact, but also having this business approach. Say, well, we are not going to win too much. You are going to win. So the distributors are very well. So even with this price, the ones that makes the most profit, massive profit, are the distributors, which at the end is what you need. So we short our revenues to give them the massive revenue in order to ensure the massive distribution. That's also the interesting approach. Interesting. Okay, thank you very much.